It's probably the first time I've ever done an episode with someone that I've met in person just the day before.
We just sort of aim to make that contact between the tutor and the student as frictionless and as easy as we possibly can. I'm particularly enthusiastic about music and being able to share that knowledge. And of course, I find that being able to teach and to share that knowledge inevitably makes your own subject knowledge stronger, and you sort of grow yourself as part of that sort of tutoring and framework. It's early days. We're still very much trying to grow things, I don't know if I still feel like I'm kind of faking it, if that makes sense. You know, you're sort of slowly building things up.
Hello and welcome to the Qualified Tutor Podcast, the podcast that brings you the latest in the world of tutoring, edtech and education, and hopefully inspires in you the big change that each and every one of us is capable of. Qualified Tutor is an industry-leading tutor training organisation and online tutoring community for thousands of tutors around the world. This podcast is the voice of this community, where we aim to hear from tutors, teachers, entrepreneurs, coaches, business experts, students, tutorpreneurs, and more from the world of tutoring about what inspires them every day, how they can help tutors like you, and what they've learnt about tutoring along the way. The question is, what will you learn today?
Hello and welcome to the 139th episode of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. My name is Ludo Miller, the host of this podcast. Welcome back to regular listeners. Welcome to any of you for whom this is your first time listening to the Qualified Tutor Podcast. And a very, very warm welcome to our guest today, Jason Preece. Welcome to the podcast, Jason.
Hello, really glad to be here.
It's lovely to have you on. It's probably the first time I've ever done an episode with someone that I've met in person just the day before. Jason and I were both at the Tutors Association National Tutors Conference yesterday on Thursday the 27th of October. Probably should have just brought my microphone, done it there, but we decided to keep today for consistency reasons. It was a great little event, wasn't it, Jason?
Yeah, wonderful, really. Had a great time. It was really informative and really, really exciting, I think, to sort of meet so many other people operating in the tutoring industry. So kind of all thumbs up from me, really.
Yeah. As many thumbs up as possible. It was, conferences, in the tutoring industry are maybe not quite as commonplace as in other industries, but it's great to see those kind of cropping up, both here and abroad. A really nice event. Great to see so many faces. Jason, we've come to know recently in the last kind of few weeks and months. And for those who are not aware of Jason or not aware of his business, Jason is the founder of the Tutor Index, which he founded kind of about 18 months ago, last spring. And the Tutor Index really focuses on creating. It's a tutoring platform that looks to create that kind of perfect match between tutor and student. And we'll be hearing a little bit more about the values and the purpose behind the Tutor Index kind of over the next 25 minutes or so. But Jason, by trade, is a tutor and a teacher, has been tutoring for over 12 years now, is a music teacher, currently at Abingdon School in Oxford, assistant director of music there. And really that has come from a DPhil in music composition, which he obtained at University of Oxford. So a really rich background in music teaching, and then now coupled with this understanding of what it is that creates connection between tutor and student. So really, really nice background to be coming from there. we love the rich vein of music and education. That theme on this podcast, it's one that's cropped up a lot. So hoping for a little bit more of that today. But Jason, you are a teacher and a director of music at a school currently. But if we were to transport ourselves back to your school days, what would we see? What would the teachers be saying?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't particularly. I know that at school I was sort of very enthusiastic and very sort of passionate about music, and I know that that certainly came across, within music lessons and within other lessons, in both good ways and potentially problematic ways as well. I know that my enthusiasm for music, was as I say, sort of mostly very positive, but potentially sort of got in the way of sort of my other subjects as well, much to the I suppose the relative frustrations of some of my teachers. But I suppose you sort of asked me to see if I can, locate any school reports from that time, and that definitely that did not happen. Yeah, I think they've been lost. They're sort of, maybe they're far too deep in the sort of the archive that my parents' house is gradually sort of transforming into.
But lost among sheets of music, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Just under stacks of sort of, I don't know, kind of leaves of sort of Beethoven and sort of Chopin and bits and bobs. But no, I sort of really sort of appreciated the question, because it did allow me to think back to my school days. And there's actually a lesson that I sort of keep returning to when I do think about, you do have those sort of nostalgic moments. So you do think back, to what school life was like. And essentially, I remember this sort of English lesson that I had. Must have been sort of early sixth form. And for whatever reason, in fact, no, I think I remember it was everyone else in the class was either doing geography or biology, and they had disappeared off onto some sort of field trip, some coursework trip. And so it was essentially just me and my English teacher. And at the time, I was struggling essentially with like the unseen poetry part of the course. I was essentially, probably writing like really terrible essays in response to those questions. And anyway, Mrs. Theobald, my total sort of legend of an English teacher at the time, just sort of sat me down and kind of had this one-on-one kind of lesson with me. And we sort of worked through a poem together, and she sort of constructed this kind of essentially like an analogy between, the poem that we were looking at on the page and sort of, the way I might look at a piece of music, So she sort of married together some of the literary sort of terminology with some of the musical terminology that maybe I was more familiar with. And that I remember was like absolutely game changing for me. Because I think it's fair to say that's changed the way that certainly changed the way I sort of read poetry at the time. And I suppose more than that, actually, because a lot of my undergraduate and postgraduate work in music has sought out influences from literature, and sort of from poetic form in particular. So that one lesson, that one sort of single sort of one-on-one kind of 50-minute, hour-long session that I had with her, really did shape the work that I did going forward.
That's most of the guests that we have on are not able to identify a particular lesson. It's more of a theme from a year with a teacher, or from a general kind of subject kind of affiliation with the good or bad memory. But that seems like you struck gold there, being able to isolate Mrs. Theobald for one session. Probably maybe the kind of experience that some people have with a tutor over, with a one-on-one tutor over a period of time, who's able to get them to see poetry in a new light, or whatever the the relationship is. But do you think then that being able to see the connections between different subjects more clearly has led you to kind of go on to do what you do? I mean, do you think there's anything in there that led to your why developing?
Oh, certainly. I think. I think one of the sort of the powerful, one of the more powerful things in that is this sort of this breaking down of subject boundaries, which I suppose happens more and more in sixth form, doesn't it? You sort of start to see that there are connections between subject areas, and certainly the. I suppose, at the time I wouldn't have realised this, but I think looking back, you do think, oh well, actually that's essentially why tutoring is a really sort of powerful sort of tool in the armoury, and that particular session, it certainly would not have been possible. I think it would have been more difficult to facilitate in a classroom situation. Not everyone in that particular analogy would not have landed with everyone in the class, and so we wouldn't have necessarily had that same sort of opportunity there. So I think that sort of does, broadly speaking, kind of build into why I do what I do. And of course, I love learning. I love being able to pass on that love of learning to my students. I'm particularly enthusiastic about music and being able to share that knowledge. And of course, I find that being able to teach and to share that knowledge inevitably makes your own subject knowledge stronger, and you sort of grow yourself as part of that sort of tutoring and framework. And I suppose at its core, it's about sort of forming those good relationships, isn't it? That sort of these are all things that I think I really value in the tutoring sphere, and I really those are those things I suppose I find rewarding within the work, and they're a big part of why I do what I do.
Yeah, and are they then imbued, intertwined with the values of the Tutor Index? Then, I mean, you've been a tutor for over 12 years now, as kind of you've mentioned and we spoke about before, and the Tutor Index cropped up kind of early last year. Are those kind of values intertwined with the Tutor Index? Why did you feel like last year was the right time to launch the Tutor Index?
I think. Yeah, I suppose, as you say, I've been tutoring for quite a while now. I've been tutoring for over 12 years, kind of part time, and in fact, growing into sort of a fairly full time thing until I took on a school teaching position as well. I started off that journey through a couple of agencies, and then increasingly sort of built that up through sort of word of mouth referrals and a few sort of kind of ads here and there. However, I don't know. I think over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, there's certainly been sort of a shift in the tutoring industry towards more sort of commission-based models, or sort of kind of more platforms potentially taking a fair amount of control over that sort of tutoring relationship. And essentially, I think I started to get a little bit maybe frustrated is too strong, but certainly a little frustrated that there wasn't necessarily a way for me to advertise my services as an independent tutor without going through some sort of agency or platform. And as I say, I see the value in going through an agency and working with that, and it's certainly invaluable for getting started in the early days. But I'm now at a point in my practice where I want to kind of essentially sort of do what I do, kind of keep control over how I make contact with clients, how I sort of promote myself, how I take payments, how I teach my lessons. And I didn't necessarily feel that there was something in the space that facilitated, sort of allowed tutors to be able to do that whilst retaining their independence. So that's effectively what we do. We try to create a space for independent tutors to advertise their services in a way that they can keep control, they can keep their sort of independent small business in like for themselves, and in a way that sort of signals quality to their potential clients. That's broadly speaking what we're trying to do.
So tutors are able to advertise their services within the platform, or it's a kind of platform which launches those adverts more broadly?
I think at the moment it's sort of within the platform. We don't we don't currently launch those adverts more broadly. We've been going for 18 months, and so I think there's still a sense that we're still quite a young company. We're still kind of thinking on our feet, as it were. And myself and my business partner, we both work full time, and we both so we've both sort of dipped our toe into this project and are gradually growing it. At the moment, it's very much those connections are made within that platform, and we don't necessarily kind of sort of launch further out. So, I mean,
the platform, although maybe in its early days, it certainly answers, I think, the right question, which is giving somewhere for independent tutors to feel independent, but to take steps towards professionalization, which I think is really important. And that word means different things for different tutors and for different parts of the tutoring industry. And yet it's still a word, I think, professionalized, that tutors just starting out who want to feel more independent can seek to achieve. Being more professional in whatever that means to you is often a goal. How can the tutoring industry improve the particular area of matching tutor and student? That's something that the Tutor Index certainly has been getting right, and I think will continue to. What needs to be done in that area to improve things?
So I think first and foremost, I suppose sort of picking up on that sort of word professionalization, we do have of course we've got sort of kind of quality control processes in place. Profiles are scrutinized. We do sort of have ID checking and sort of DBS checking, and soon to be launched sort of reference checking and sort of qualification sort of checking facilities in place. And we also have the ability to sort of integrate payments within a profile on the platform. And I think all of this helps to essentially kind of make those profiles really presentable, to put your best foot forwards, and to essentially kind of imbue the parents, the student, the clients, with a kind of confidence that this person is going to be sort of worth talking to and is going to be worth exploring. And I think potentially after that, we just sort of aim to make that contact between the tutor and the student as frictionless and as easy as we possibly can. So, you can be in direct contact with the tutor fairly immediately, and then you can move that conversation on as you see fit. So, if you want to talk to them via email, absolutely, you go for it. WhatsApp, phone call, Zoom, whatever works best for you. Because I think those initial conversations are vital to get that tutoring relationship just off the ground in a way that ensures that all parties are on the same page. So I know from my own practice that in those initial conversations, I tend to lay out how I teach, my approach to my teaching philosophy, if that doesn't sound too sort of high-minded, the way I conduct those sessions, and equally I set out things that I don't particularly do, and I, within that conversation, I think it's a really, really good opportunity to lay out what the way I sort of run my practice. And equally to see whether the parents, the client, is someone that I feel like I can work with and I can benefit. And I think that's broadly speaking what we try to do. And also I think this approach has real advantages now that it's sort of coming to light that the tutoring industry is so broad. We've got tutors that are potentially sort of working sort of within their undergraduate studies, and you have maybe a sort of a mentor-mentee relationship there between sort of tutor and student. We've got kind of experienced teachers, qualified teachers, retired teachers, examiners, other people who have kind of potentially got different backgrounds within the education sphere, all of whom have a different set of skills to bring to the table. And I think by trying to facilitate that direct contact in a really easy way, and in a relatively sort of risk-free way, I think that allows parents to it certainly gives them the opportunity to ultimately make the right choice, given their child and the situation that they find themselves in.
Yeah, absolutely. And which is the key to ultimately having satisfied clients, isn't it? Is ones where they feel they've made the right choice, that choice is vindicated, and they've returned for more work. Whether that's the parent or the student who feels that, and hopefully it's both of them rather than one, not the other, then you're going to keep having clients returning to your platform. And if their experience with the tutor is good, then the tutor is more likely to stay with the Tutor Index than kind of go elsewhere. So I think it's really important that those matching criteria are and the relationship to match tutor and student is really, really considered. And that the faults that you may have seen in your kind of previous 12 years of tutoring, that you're kind of answering those. I think that's exactly the right way to go about it.
And this week's episode is brought to you coincidentally by the Tutor Index.
Hi there, I'm Chris, co-founder of the Tutor Index. It's incredibly exciting to be sponsoring this episode of the Qualified Tutor podcast. Whether you're just starting out or have been tutoring for a number of years, the Tutor Index provides a great platform to promote yourself to new and existing clients and allows you to teach how you want, when you want. Best of all, we charge zero commission or finder's fees, meaning you keep more of what you earn. So sign up today for your free profile at thetutorindex.com.
Jason, I wonder then if you kind of had a bit more advice to those tutors who are in a similar position or are soon to be in a similar position to you, of having a great deal of experience in the tutoring industry but wanting to grow things a little bit more to kind of platform or even agency level. Do you have some advice about that journey from sort of one-man band to small tutoring business leader?
Yeah, sure. I should caveat this by definitely saying that it's early days. We're still very much trying to grow things, and I don't know if I still feel like I'm kind of faking it, if that makes sense. You're sort of slowly building things up. But with that, fair to say, probably enormous caveat out the way. I think for us it was just a case of getting started, and just sort of figuring out what we needed to do as we went along. I think maybe when I initially thought of the idea and sort of talked it through with my business partner, it feels like quite a big idea, and actually just starting and essentially taking it step by step has been sort of invaluable, effectively. I just thinking about kind of breaking down challenges sort of one at a time. I mean, I think we started out trying to, we've got a chicken and egg problem. We need to sort of marry together tutors and students. Students aren't going to come to a platform where there aren't any tutors, and tutors aren't necessarily going to be happy if they're on a platform and there's no sort of students available. So we started off kind of addressing the tutor side of that problem first. And I think, that was quite challenging. We had to sort of really think on our feet, and essentially landed on a solution whereby we targeted university students primarily because we could reach a lot of university students via university job boards, and we could do that in a relatively targeted way and in a fairly cost-effective way. But that wasn't our intention to start with, and that just sort of just happened. And also our collaboration. My business partner has been invaluable. My Chris Nicholson, who sort of runs the Tutor Index with me. He's great. He brings a lot of sort of technical expertise to the table as a web developer, and a sense of sort of also sort of business acumen and business experience. And it's really good because obviously I'm not like the repository of really good ideas. I certainly can't do the vast majority of the things that Chris can do. And yeah, so it's that's been really useful to just have someone to essentially run the thing with. And yeah, it's sort of great. He's not afraid to sort of disagree in a constructive way, and sort of provide alternative perspectives. And that's really great because that allows you to sort of really refine your ideas and make them more practical and make them come to fruition in a more effective way.
Absolutely. The advantage of having a business partner with you, Jason, is cannot be understated. I think for people who are thinking of going into business, I think locating or seeking a business partner who can help with those areas that you're not strong with is, as you've said a number of times, is invaluable, and will save you potentially years of kind of struggling to grow, and also imagine hundreds of thousands of pounds if you have to keep learning how to do that yourself and delaying projects or seeking freelance people to come on and do those things for you every time. So yeah, we've seen a lot of times in the education industry that teams with co-founders, 2 co-founders, 2, even 3 co-founders, that there's a lot that can be shared there. It doesn't mean that one-man bands can't or organizations with a single founder can't succeed, but the shared load definitely helps to progress the ideas and the projects. So I'm glad that you found Chris. I'm glad that Chris found you. He wouldn't have been able to do it by himself either.
And now a brief word from last week's guest, Omar El-Dokani, whose episode you can catch after this.
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you to Ludo for the invitation on the QT podcast. I had a great time, and I hope he did as well. The conversation was really nice. What I enjoyed about the podcast, look, I always enjoy exchanging opinions and sitting down and having conversation. I think it's always beneficial and nice for the end user to hear as well. What I would say to a future guest, probably just try and share your knowledge to the best of your ability. Articulate your thoughts, and you never know who might be listening on the other side, which may seek that sort of advice or knowledge that you want to share. So that's probably my 3 things. And thanks to Ludo for the invite once again, and I had a great time.
Jason, it's really lovely to chat. We're just coming to an end here, really. We like to keep our episodes to around 25-30 minutes. But for really the final question and looking ahead, the Tutor Index has got so much more, so many more ways in which it can grow and in which it can help students and tutors. What are some of the things that you're looking forward to next? What's next for Jason Preece?
I don't know. I lead an incredibly busy life at the moment, sort of, between kind of family and sort of school teaching, tutoring, and of course running the Tutor Index. So I suppose it's about kind of developing each of these things in turn. I mean, certainly with the Tutor Index, we're trying to carefully continue building it up, so that it continue to grow and achieve what we're aiming to do, essentially in a really effective way in the wake of the new regulatory framework, and in a way that sort of that stays true to our aims. That's kind of next on the table for us. We've sort of got sort of 1,500 sort of tutors who have signed up, of which 300 or so have published have sort of passed our quality control sort of process. But we're always looking for new tutors, and indeed we're sort of trying to grow our kind of student numbers as well. But yeah, I don't know, I'm trying to nail the whole like work-life balance thing. Basically, that'd be good. So any tips, please let me know, send them my way, because yeah.
Of course, it's a two-way learning process. I imagine by the time this episode comes to be published, those numbers will have increased greatly. So that's an exciting thing to look forward to. If people do want to send you tips, but more likely if people want to get in touch with you about the Tutor Index, Jason, what's the best way they can do that?
I'm contactable at jason@thetutorindex.com. And you can find out more about us at the www.thetutorindex.com as well. So, yeah, there we go.
Look at that. They will, as ever, all the links will be in the show notes. So I know some podcast listening apps have slightly strange ways of formatting the show notes, but the links are in there wherever. You can either click them directly, you might need to copy and paste them into your search bar. But really lots of ways to get in touch with Jason and to support that journey. But Jason, thank you so much for coming on. This has been the 139th episode of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. What a pleasure it has been to have you on, Jason. I hope you've enjoyed talking about your business and your background.
No, it's been a real pleasure to be here. Really, thank you for the opportunity. It's been really nice. It's been really nice to prepare for it, and it's been really nice to sort of actively do it. So, thanks to you, Ludo. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Not to worry, Jason. Listeners, we will see you all next time for the 140th episode. But for one final time, and a big cheer wherever you are, listeners. Hands together for Jason Preece, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. Your next step is to check out the Love Tutoring community, and in particular, Love Tutoring Community Connect, a new premium membership space which will serve all your subject-specific CPD needs alongside a friendly, professional community space that meets regularly. Visit qualifiedtutor.org/transformational-training to find out more about our CPD accredited Level 2 safeguarding and Ofqual recognised courses, the first of their kind in the tutoring industry. See you there.